Finding out what series really work for you can be really, really cathartic because then you know what you like and what you don't. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and today guys we're going to be talking series that I have DNF'd. But before we get into this video, please make sure to like and subscribe to the channel as it does help us grow on that march to 5,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. And while you're doing all that, make sure to check the description box down below for the link to the Wizardly Discord, as well as links to all my social media, including information about me Patreon. And that's it, guys. I've only got 5 series here that I really want to touch on. Now, do I DNF a lot? Yes, it's kind of a running joke that Andrew of the Wizardly Reads is a DNF king. And if you don't know what DNF means, it stands for did not finish or, do not finish or, whatever. But basically, these are series that I started reading and then I just kind of noped right on out of them. And these aren't in any particular order. And I'm going to kind of talk about why I didn't want to continue these series. And the first one we're going to talk about, and I don't own, usually if I DNF a book, I don't own that book anymore. So, I don't have anything to show up and show you. So we've got some nice little art to show you, and they'll all be appearing right here. And the first one is the Green Rider series by Kristen Brittain. And the first book is called Green Rider. And Green Rider, I was kind of 50-50 on, because very early on there were some tropes that I didn't really like, and then as things started ramping up, I really started enjoying the book. And then we got to book 2. And book 2 was such, in my opinion, a drop in quality that, I just lost all interest for the series. The main character starts doing, really weird things, and then, a lot of characters just make a lot of irrational decisions. And even though there were some really cool concepts, I believe there was, some time travel elements and things of that nature that, I thought were really, really interesting. But it was everything else that just didn't make a whole lot of sense. If I stop to take a second and be like, okay, this particular element is being introduced 35% into or 75% into the book, and was very much able to happen much earlier in the story. Why are we introducing it now, when this could have just resolved the entire issue, and this book could have been a novella? And it didn't seem very well thought out. And there's currently 7, I think 8 books in this series. And after book 2, I had such a poor experience with it, I just decided to move on. Up next, we have got the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams. And this book has received a bit of hype. It's even gotten special editions from the Broken Binding. And, what can I say about this? The series itself has interesting characters. It's got a very intriguing world. And it's got some interesting concepts. But to the point where it kind of gets a little outlandish with it. And all the elements don't sync up really well, in my opinion, on this series. The characters are very melodramatic, and they kind of do things in order to force plot narrative, even though the things don't really make a lot of sense. There's distracting side quests that lead to nowhere, and then, I guess you could say that in, real life, but that's not what I'm reading it for. I'm reading for a cohesive adventure, and I just wasn't getting that. Now, don't get me wrong, the world building, very cool. It was a nice blend of, fantasy and sci-fi. I thought that was really cool. It's got bat mounts on it. I thought that was really cool. It's got, elf-like creatures who aren't really elf-like, who are kind of elf/vampire kind of hybrids. I thought that was really cool. Just overall, the character decisions and some of the dialogue choices just didn't seem to fit. The pieces didn't quite work that well for me. And so, I finished the first book, which I believe is it called The Winnowing Flame? I think it's called The Winnowing Flame. And then I felt no desire to pick up the second book, and so I moved on. The third series we're going to talk about here, this is going to be a pretty quick video, but the third series that I have ended up moving on from, I actually really enjoyed the first book, and this is the Dragonlords by John Hollins. I did a dedicated book review for this one. You can watch that right there. And I do think the first book is very much worth reading. It is fun. It has got just a bunch of adult raunchy humor. Like, it was just heist after blunder, and it was fantastic. It was bombastic. And then, like, I was just like, you know what? Like, I really want to read this series. So I got the other 2 books. And then the books sat there. And they sat there. And they sat there. And I realized this wasn't an experience that I think is able to be recaptured. Because I looked at, in order to prove my point, like, I kind of went and read the book descriptions. And the second book was just the first book over again, doing a lot of the similar things. And then the third book was just an evolution of the same concepts. Just more hijinks, more heists, more dirty jokes. And I feel like that's something that can wear a bit thin real quick. So I decided to leave this series on a high note after the first book, just because I didn't think that the style was able to be recaptured in the same magic that the first book did. Which is kind of where we come to with this next series, because I enjoy this author, and this author is one of the ones that I really enjoy, and I have a lot of misses with as well. We're going to talk about 2 series by Adrian Tchaikovsky, and so this may be 5 or 6, I should say, 5 or 6 series that we're going to talk about. And specifically, I don't know what the series is called, but it's the Children of Time series. I read Children of Time, and oh my goodness, like, fantastic sci-fi with some great elements and ideas that are explored within this series. I mean, just thoughts of evolution and the way, like, culture can evolve, and just space exploration and surviving the apocalypse and space travel and colonization. All of that is explored in a really fantastic way in the first book of this series. So then when I started the second series, it was just the same recycled ideas, and it just felt like an unnecessary addition. And there's a third book that by the time I DNF'd the second book halfway through because I was so incredibly bored, I had no desire to read the third book that was coming out. And that kind of makes me sad, because the first book was just such a home run. And in my brain, I decided to just make it a standalone, because as a standalone, it really, really works. But as part of a trilogy, I didn't see it. I didn't see the point. And so I walked away from that series as well. And then the next one we're going to talk about makes me kind of sad, because I loved the first book. Again, I did a book review. You can watch it right there. This is Adrian Tchaikovsky's Shadows of the Apt. I loved Empire in Black and Gold. I loved it. I thought it was really, really interesting. Basically, in this series, you've got a bunch of insect-like humanoids, or humanoids who have insect-like abilities, called Kindin. And there's this invading, like, wasp empire, and the Kindin are trying to kind of, like, band together to kind of repel this invading force, because they're an ever-expanding empire. It's a great kind of military fantasy. We get some, like, really interesting characters. We get a multitude of different, like, there's mantis, there's ant, there's wasp, there's beetle. I mean, if you can think of the insect, there's moth, spider, a whole bunch that I'm just probably forgetting about. But a lot of them have their prejudices against the other Kindin, and they have this kind of built-in miscommunication trope. And this miscommunication trope really started to bug me, because, like, even though it was built in, and I mentioned in my review, I really liked the fact that it was built in the first book. And then as things just kind of progressed, I made it all the way through 4 books. And something that kept bugging me is we kept pulling the lens back on this series. And this is something that some people may enjoy. And also, I must clarify, I did these on audio. I did the first book on physical, and then I did the next 3 on audio. And it could be the audio experience just wasn't for me, and I need to go back and give these a physical read. But we kept pulling the lens back on this world, and you get more cities, more maps, more Kindin. Like, they just kept introducing new species of Kindin, and it just got all a bit bloated. By the time we hit book 4, there's kind of this reset in the series to move forward to the next 6 books. And I was just like, you know what? I've read a complete arc on this series. I have no real desire to come back to these characters and come back to this world. And so I just kind of walked away. And it never really got better for me than the first book, which kind of made me sad. And then the last series I have to talk about is Red Queen's War by Mark Lawrence. And I really enjoyed Broken Empire. I've enjoyed Book of the Ancestor by Mark Lawrence. I've got The Girl in the Stars that I really want to read. I've pre-ordered The Book That Would Not Burn, I believe is what it is called, his new book that is coming out here this year. I've got that pre-ordered on hardcover. I like Mark Lawrence as an author. There's nothing per se that was really bad about Red Queen's War. It just, I didn't jive with the protagonist. I couldn't connect with him just because he is sleazy, he is cowardly, but he's a berserker, and his companion Snorri is fantastic. And this just felt like more Broken Empire, but done and told in a different kind of perspective, from a different kind of POV. We've got some overlap in the series where, Jalen will be in some places that Jorg was in at the same time, and there's little bits of overlap in the series, which can be kind of rewarding as little Easter eggs. But for me, it just got a bit much, and I wasn't able to connect with Jalen, which is fine. That just means that this particular protagonist wasn't for me. I'm not saying you shouldn't read any of these series. By all means, I know people who have enjoyed all of these series. This is just kind of my personal taste on series that I have chosen not to continue. Let me know in the comments down below some of your thoughts on some of my picks, because I am willing to revisit a couple of these. Like Shadows of the Apt, I could probably be convinced to revisit on physical. The Dragonlords or Red Queen's War, I could probably be convinced to give these another shot. But right now, these series sit as DNFs. I do not have plans as of right now to continue these series. But let me know in the comments down below your thoughts. Let's see if you can change my mind. That said, guys, that's all I've really got here for you. So, as always, till next time, peace out, stay magical, bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons.